Hey everybody, and welcome back to WebMD&DM, where I diagnose the discussions that take place around my table while playing both games, the Dungeons and the Dragons. Welcome back to the Northern Defenders campaign diaries, where we are continuing the adventures of Gurok, the Orc Barbarian, Elris, the Elven Monk, Asuna, the Elven Rogue, Asami, the Dwarven Cleric, and Leah, the Elven Ranger. When last we left our heroes, the party had been contacted by High Father Kizuna Motrai, the one-armed red dragonborn leader of the Pelor Temple in the capital of Daggermere, where the party had been situated. High Father Motrai's friend, Randall Marstag, the human druid, had gone north some time ago and had not been heard from since. High Father Motrai was nervous about his friend's disappearance and was hiring the adventurers to go north and try and investigate what had happened to him. While High Father Motrai had little idea where Randall Marstag was, he knew that the druid spent a lot of time with a particular group of barbarians in the north, known as the Daelor tribe, under the command of an individual known as Chief Grog Highclimber, who was leader of this barbarian tribe. So High Father Motrai encourages the heroes to go and speak with Chief Highclimber and see if he could tell them where Randall Marstag had disappeared to. After about a days and a half travel through the woods and dealing with a small goblin bandit group that had attacked them, the party is able to find the Daelor tribe of barbarians. Meeting with Chief Grog Highclimber, the party discover that the Daelor tribe does know what happened to Randall Marstag, but are unwilling to share it for free. Chief Highclimber says that information is power for the barbarians when dealing with these southern folk. The party is given a new mission. The Daelor tribe have been dealing with multiple threats that have been attacking them throughout the northern wastes. Everything from orcs coming in off the plains, to a horned beast in the woods, to goblins raiding their hunting parties. Chief Highclimber tells the party that if they want the information about Randall Marstag, they have to go into the Goblin War Camp, find the Goblin chieftain, kill him, and bring his head back as proof. Seeing little alternative, the party agrees and are escorted to the location of the Goblin War Camp, set up in what appears to be the ruins of a human settlement. Swiftly dealing with the guards protecting the outer wall, the party is able to find a small barn and hole up for the night, hoping to continue their adventures through the Goblin War Camp in the morning, when the goblins will be less likely to be on alert. That plan proves to be a little less fruitful than they had hoped, as they are discovered by a wandering goblin patrol. The barn is set on fire, and the party has yet another fight on their hands. After finishing the fight with the goblin patrol, the party then leaves the war camp, rests for the night in the outside forest, and then continues their approach in the goblin war camp in the morning. Growing somewhat impatient, the party then uses a orcish war chant and a set of bagpipes to scare most of the goblins away, approaching the inner gate of this abandoned human village before the sun is even at high noon. After dealing with another group of goblin guards and some wolves, the party then prepares themselves to enter into the inner bailey, home of the stone keep, which the party believes is the throne area of the goblin chieftain. However, as they are spending their time cleaning themselves up after that initial battle, Gurok decides to enter in ahead of the rest of the party and discovers a goblin alchemist, the best way to describe him, with Albert Einstein hair, a pair of thick glasses, and this leather apron. And unfortunately, the Goblin Alchemist discovers Gurok as well. Recognizing the threat that a giant orc wandering into his area is, the Goblin Alchemist turns to his two assistants and cries out an alarm, and that's initiative. And that's where we pick up today's session. Hearing the Goblin Alchemist let out the cry of alarm, Leah is the first to react. Rushing forward, she's able to step nimbly through the rocks, her being a ranger, and arrives on the scene of the battle. Unfortunately, it was her entire movement speed to get up to that point, so her turn is over. Gurok is next to act. He pulls a javelin from his backpack and immediately tries to hit the alchemist. However, the spear misses the Goblin Alchemist, glances off the table, and sends a couple of vials of caustic-looking liquids spilling onto the ground. The goblins seem particularly careful not to let any of the liquids spill onto themselves. The two goblin assistants grab their blades off a nearby table and bust out of the stable doors, preparing to rush towards Gurok. As they do so, they both attempt to swing at him. One of them has their blow deflected by Gurok's thick, muscular arm. The other one is able to get a small blow onto his shoulder. However, Gurok is full rage by this point, and it does not hurt as much as you might think. It is until the alchemist joins his assistants on the outside of the barn. Pulling a thin clay flask from his belt, he turns and lobs it at Gurok, striking him right across the shoulder. The clay flask immediately cracks and shatters across his shoulder, leaving behind this caustic, acidic liquid that burns deep into his muscles. Gurok's rage is enough to resist a blade, but it is not enough to resist this acid that has now been poured onto his shoulder. Asuna also charges forward, drawing her 2 short swords. She is unfortunately slowed by the difficult terrain caused by these rocks, but she is able to get on the map, which is more than can be said for her other allies. At this point, the tower door behind the 2 elves bursts open and 2 more goblins join the fray. They had been alerted to the combat outside at the gate, but had only been able to join just recently. Pulling their bowstrings taut, they launch a volley towards Leah, and one of the arrows strikes her right in the back. Next up is Elris's turn. As we already know from previous campaign diaries, the elven monk moves very, very quickly. Flying across the battlefield, he is easily able to get right up to one of the goblins. Launching out with a flying fist, he's able to strike it right into the gut. While the goblin does keel over slightly at the pain, it does not fall. And lastly, bringing up the rear, Asami with her short little dwarven legs is not even able to get onto the battlefield at this point. Back up to the top of the round, Leah, short bow in hand, whips around and fires an arrow right back at the goblin who had wounded her. The arrow strikes right into the goblin's eye and it collapses to the ground dead. Gurak then whips out his great axe. With a twirl of the handle through his fingers, he immediately bisects the goblin right in front of him, cutting him right down the line of symmetry. The 2 halves slowly slide apart and collapse onto the ground. However, the other assistant doesn't go down easily. Lashing forward with his scimitar, he's able to cut Gurak in the side. However, Gurak is still enraged, so the blow is not very effective, and the goblin immediately begins to fall back towards the alchemist. The alchemist then rushes forward. Pulling another clay flask from his belt, he turns and he lobs it towards Leah, striking her right in the back once again. However, this one is not full of a caustic acid, it is instead full of alchemist's fire, and Leah Moonbrook slowly begins to burn. Asuna, blades in hand, rushes forward and with 2 downward strikes attempts to kill one of the goblin guards who had just emerged. However, her blows are deflected by the goblin's scimitar. Conversely, the goblin guard's scimitar is unable to get through Asuna's own defensive flurrying with her blades. 2 appear to be locked in an epic engagement. Elris decides to turn his attention towards this powerful alchemist who has recently joined the fray. Using a quick disengage action, Elris rushes forward and attempts to strike at the alchemist. However, his blows are unable to hit the nimble alchemist who is ducking and weaving around them. Asami finally struggles through the difficult terrain and arrives on the battlefield. Pulling her warhammer from her belt, she prepares to engage with the same goblin who Asuna is engaged in such a deadly conflict with. However, it is her whole turn to get onto the field. Top of the 3rd round, Leah attempts to put the flames out that are currently encasing her. However, she is unable to put them out successfully. Gurak then attempts to strike at the assistant who had been engaging with him for so long. However, his wild, enraged swing with an axe only serves to embed it deep into the woodwork of the stables. And with a couple of quick tugs, he realizes that axe is staying in there for the rest of the combat. With a snarl, he pulls a hand axe from his belt and prepares to strike at this goblin once more. The assistant, realizing that Gurak might not be the best opponent to fight, disengages and rushes towards Elris. Striking at him with a scimitar, he continues to run towards the gateway. It appears he's had enough of this conflict. However, the same cannot be said for the alchemist. He once again pulls an acid flask from his belt and immediately throws it in the face of Elris. It shatters across his chest and begins to burn at the unprotected skin of the elf. Back over to Asuna, her blades finally slip through this guard's defense and slams deep into the side, immediately killing him thanks to her sneak attack. Asami, seeing that most of the goblins had been felled and realizing that Leah was still in trouble with the flames, moves over and helps her to put the flames out. Back up to the 4th and final round, Leah pulls her blades from her belt and enraged rushes towards the goblin alchemist. As she rushes forward, she puts the blades across her chest and slices the goblin alchemist's throat wide open. Black blood oozes from the wound and stains the leather apron as the goblin alchemist collapses, not even able to speak any dying words. Gurak, watching the final goblin alchemist fleeing out of the courtyard, turns around the corner and throws the hand axe, embedding it right into the goblin's spine. The goblin collapses, and the battle for the heroes is won. The heroes decide to spend some time and investigate the alchemist's workshop. After all, it is filled with all these strange liquids and vials. The party also realized that they took quite a bit of damage from that crazed little alchemist and the surprise reinforcements, so they decided that this would probably be a good time to take a short rest. Everybody piles into the alchemist's workshop, they close the doors, and they take a tense short rest. At the end of the short rest, the party realizes that there are 2 vials of alchemist's fire hidden amongst the goblin supplies, as well as a potion that the heroes believe to be a potion of healing. Leah, the more daring of the group, decides to test the contents, and she realizes that if imbibed, it will heal them, which will be useful if the cleric ever runs out of spells and they're in the middle of a battle. Divvying up the supplies, they give the healing potion to the cleric, Elris takes one of the vials of alchemist fire, and Gurok takes one of the vials of alchemist fire. Partway through the short rest, the party hears the sounds of a door opening and then closing again. While the party is not 100% certain as to what that means, they are somewhat confident that somebody opened the door of the keep, and whether something went in or out, they are not certain. Finishing their short rest, they emerge from the stables, move up to the stone keep, and Gurok bursts open the door with a heavy boot. As he does so, he lets out this huge into what appears to be a fairly nice foyer. At least it was until the goblins got a hold of it. They can see the rug is filthy, the table is tilting, and the 3 goblins playing cards in the corner have completely soiled themselves at the sound of this orc bursting into their room. And it is once again time for initiative. Gurok immediately pulls a weapon and prepares to rush in and attack the goblins. However, all of the goblins appear completely disinterested in fighting and rush around Gurok. Elris also attempts to strike at one of the goblins as they flee past him. However, Leah has a bit of an opposition to this idea, and she imposes disadvantage on Elris's attack. She believes that they should let fleeing enemies flee and prevents Elris from striking at one of them. However, her attempt to stop Elris prevents her from being able to stop Asuna, who also follows up with a strike. Asuna's attack of opportunity is able to cut open the throat of one of the fleeing goblins, and it collapses immediately. As the 2 remaining goblins attempt to flee out of the back corridor of the inner bailey, one of them is dropped by a well-placed arrow to the knee and is left for dead as the other goblin flees out into the courtyard. The heroes gather around their fallen prey and prepare to interrogate it. While the interrogation does not go over well, as the goblin is terrified, blubbering, and has almost no information, they are able to determine that the chieftain is in fact on the top floor of this keep. After a brief discussion as to whether or not to kill or release this goblin, the party eventually decide to let him go. The goblin staggers out of the inner bailey and flees into the night. The party then prepare themselves for what they believe to be the final confrontation with the chieftain of the goblins. Making their way slowly and carefully up the steps of the inner keep, they eventually find themselves approaching the second floor. As they approach the second floor, they can all see 4 goblins, bows drawn and aimed at the stairs. 2 goblins dressed in more ritualistic sort of shaman vestments with like stick armor and large headdresses and carrying around staffs. And 1 goblin who doesn't look quite right. His skin doesn't have the same orange reddish hue that the other goblins have. His is more of a mottled gray. And his hands do not bear a weapon, but around his neck he does bear a very intricate necklace and a headdress that could almost be mistaken for a crown as he sits upon what appears to be a very nice-looking chair. As the heroes poke their heads up, the goblins' bows tense. The goblins wait to see what the heroes will do. After a brief moment of contemplation, Elris decides to pull his alchemist fire and throws it at the table. It slams into the table and begins to burn, as all 4 goblins launch arrows directly into Elris's chest. Of the 4 arrows, 2 of them are able to strike deep into Elris's chest, and he is immediately dropped to half hit points. With hostile intent being declared, the ritualistic shamans declare to the entirety of the goblins to kill them all! And that's where we'll pick up next session. So, the heroes have successfully made their way to the final battle with the Goblin Chieftain. However, that will have to be saved for next session. So let me know down in the comments below, what did you think of these current battles? Now, the battle with the goblins appearing and sort of a reinforcements aspect, that was a little bit of something I was playing around with. I don't do it often. I tend to have situations where the heroes are right in the middle of things, but it was still an interesting way to sort of introduce bad guys in such a fashion, especially considering the extenuating circumstances of their incursion so far. Let me know what you thought about the fact that the heroes were able to completely avoid a fight with the 3 goblin bodyguards because of a very successful intimidate check. I want you all to let me know what you think about that and ask me any questions that you might have in the doobly-doo down below. I'm also curious, what do you think is up with the Goblin Chieftain? Why do you think it is that the ritualistic shamans were the ones calling the orders while the chieftain sat on his throne in silence? As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please feel free to like, comment, all that other hoo-ha. I'm looking forward to any comments you might have. I'm hoping this video is interesting enough that you might consider sharing it. Don't forget to roll your charisma saving throw against that subscription button. I hope you all have a lovely day, and until I see you in the next one, take care.